Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it is for you. Welcome back to a Division 2 video, and I got another banger of a build for you. A perfect PvE DZ build will give you damage all the way up to 1.5 million a crit shot, and will give you tons of survivability with 32% armor on kill, and the damage is instantly there. This automatic rifle build doesn't need stacking. No, we're not utilizing striker. The damage is instantly there. And of course, getting that survivability as well. Because we know the PvE DZ can be very tough, especially around at alert level 4. Most of the gameplay you see will be at alert level 4, me trying to find some landmarks to do solo. Of course, the 100% Hasbro backfire build that I made a couple of days ago will do very well as well. But this gives you the opportunity to beam people down from any distance, as the optimal range goes all the way up to 71 meters. Yes, we can beam people down from a distance and still hit that 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 million while they're trying to get to you. You can use this build up close, you can use this build on distance and shred everyone down while still having survivability. I mainly focused on the PvE DZ for this build, but you can also utilize this build everywhere else. But of course, make sure to check the build stats, as we are building this build towards the PvE DZ, where stuff gets normalized. But that's enough gameplay, enough intro. Without further ado, let's jump right over to the build. Starting with our specialization, as usual, we are using the minigun. This will give us an extra 10% armor on kill, and make sure to stack into the weapon damage of the weapon that you're using, because this overall build can be utilized with everything. You can put an LMG on there, you can put an AR on there, you can put an SMG on there. It will all work. But make sure for this build, we are of course stacking into rifle damage. Then, talking about the rifles, let's jump over to the weapon itself. And that is the lightweight M4. I have an expertise of level 30 on there. It has a total damage of 262,000, an RPM of 414, a mag of 60 or 61 when we reload. We have a headshot damage of 80%, and then the optimal range of 72 meters. And this gives you the opportunity to beam people down from any distance and still hitting those high crit shots. As you can see, the damage you target out of cover attribute on there. Every weapon should hold this except for LMGs. Critical hit chance will be then the better roll. These stats are of course possible because we have our season maxed out all the way up to that extra rate of fire. That's why we have that higher RPM, that's why we have that higher mag, and that's why we have that higher optimal range, as we have our season maxed out to 2400 canisters donated. And then we went for the talent Sadist on there. Amplifies weapon damage by 16% to bleeding enemies. After 2 kills, applies a bleed to the next enemy you hit. Don't forget, this is of course the PvP setup. We usually receive a little bit more amplified damage, but like I said, I want to showcase this build for the PvE DZ. And then we have to look into the PvP stats. Talking about the stats for the weapon, or better said the mods for the weapon, is 1-time critical hit chance, 1-time the extra rounds with minus 10% reload speed, and then I chose to go for 2 quality of life stability mods for an extra 70% stability and minus 10% optimal range. And why do I do this? Because I do not like when my rifle bounces. Usually you would love to see things bounce, but overall this rifle I do not want to see bounce. And because we're already pretty powerful, we already have the survivability, I thought let's go into a little bit more quality of life. And that's why my gun doesn't move, and we can beam people down from every single distance. Secondary weapon, I chose to go for the Lexington, of course, damage your target out of cover on there, and then again, of course, going for the Sadist talent. That will again give us some amplification damage to bleeding enemies. Like I mentioned, this build can hold any weapon. So if you run out of ammo, you can just switch over to your Lexington or whatever you prefer. Make sure that you stack into the weapon damages on your specialization for your secondary weapon as well. And then just switch around and shoot with this. The build itself is not set up to only be helpful for a rifle. You can use whatever you like. And then for the pistol, we have the quick step. The quick step, of course, will give us sports mode, will give us a 6% extra movement speed, what will help out a little bit, especially in the PvE DZ. If you're running from landmark to landmark, it's always nice to switch over to sports mode to be at least 6% faster. But you can also use the whiplash if you're, for example, shooting with an LMG. If you switch over to the whiplash and then switch back to your main weapon, it will be completely reloaded, and that is a huge help for the LMGs. So if you're gonna put an LMG on the build, definitely look into the exotic pistol, the whiplash. But now, let's jump over to the whole overview of the build, and there we have it. Yes, sir. You probably already noticed it, but it's going to be OD. Ongoing directive in combination with a Cheska and in combination with the Overdog gloves. Let's start with the Overdog gloves. This of course comes with weapon damage, critical hit chance and critical hit damage, but it's of course all about the talent is called Weakest Link. Amplifies weapon damage by 18% to the lowest ranking enemies currently in combat as per tier hierarchy. And what I've noticed is that there are a lot of the same tier hierarchy enemies. We tested this build out in a bunch of different ways, and with the overdogs it feels the best, and you can hit up to that 1.5 million on the headshots while this is active. But overall, I think this is definitely worth going for, even though it's not always active. It is the lowest ranking enemy on the field, but if you're 1v1, that will be the lowest enemy on the field. And how do we need to get out of the DZ? Exactly, extracting, fighting those hunters. Those will then also be the lowest enemy on the field, so you will get that extra 18% amplification damage in while you fight the hunters. Then jumping over to my backpack, we chose to go for Cheska. Why Cheska? This will give us an extra 8% critical hit chance. Again, everything towards critical hit chance and critical hit damages. Critical hit damage mod on there. And then the backpack is Bloodsucker. Yes, sir. Killing an enemy adds a stack of 22% bonus armor for 12 seconds. And the max stack is 3. A total of 66% bonus armor by just taking out 3 people. And this will give us that beautiful 32% armor on kill whenever we take somebody out in combination with our specialization. So yes, we can hit up to 1.5 million armor while we have the survivability of Bloodsucker, and this feels so incredible. You can go for damage for sure, but that Bloodsucker talent helps out a ton. I personally prefer it over armor cores. Talking about armor cores, let's go over to the rest of my build, and that will all, of course, be OD. I would recommend you, just like I said with the Striker Backfire build, to find these pieces with the attribute already on there. So meaning, you're gonna find it with crit chance and or crit damage on there, so you can roll that weapon damage core to whatever you like. For example, armor, if you want a little bit more survivability. This gives you the opportunity to completely focus the build to how you like to play. So if you feel like the build is too squishy, you can add a simple armor core to it, and that's why I would always recommend you at least to find this build with the right attributes on there. For our mask, it's gonna be crit chance. For our chest piece, that's gonna be crit damage. For our holster, that's gonna be crit chance. And for our knee pads, that's gonna be crit damage as well. So you're looking for 2 times the crit damage and 2 times the crit chance on ongoing directive. And then of course, why are we using ongoing directive? 2 pieces will give us status effects, won't really do that much for us. 3 pieces will give us 30% reload speed, will help us out a ton, getting us close to that 1.2 seconds in a reload. But it's all about the 4-piece rules of engagement. Shooting a status affected enemy applies a mark. Killing a marked enemy will grant a full clip of hollow point ammo for your active weapon and half a clip of agent's active weapon to the rest of the party. Mark lasts for 10 seconds and hollow point ammo amplifies the weapon damage by 20% and applies bleed on hit. So whenever you take somebody out with a status effect, you will instantly get those bleed bullets and you will have them forever. You can almost never run out of this with the 61 bullets in the mag, with the 1.5 million crit shots that we do. You take out everyone and you will always keep those bleed bullets. We went a little bit higher in the amplification damage because we chose to go for the chest piece, and this will give us parabellum rounds. Increase hollow point ammo weapon damage amplification to 38%. This bonus does not apply to party members. So our party members of course still will get that 20. So next to that you boost yourself, you're also boosting your party members. And for us this will go up to 38%. Plus of course the buffs of our gloves and our weapon. 16% amp from our weapon, 18% amp from our gloves, boosting us up to 72% amplification damage, shredding through everything in the PvE DZ. And that is pretty much the whole overview of the build, or better said, the whole breakdown of the build. I went for my foam launcher. I like my foam launcher. I have 2 ammo in there because I chose to go for an extra ammo and extra in share duration. I use this so I can foam people down, then take them out, and then those bleed bullets will kick in. But because we're using the gunner specialization, you can of course also go for the benchy pulse. This will apply a status effect to them as well. Take them out and you will get your bleed bullets as well. I like my cam launcher, I like my riot foam, but that doesn't mean that you have to go for your riot foam. It's every single status effect that gives you those bleed bullets. And then next to that, of course, we chose to go for the Revive Hive, giving us a little extra life. It's still the PvE DZ, so you don't have to worry about agents taking out your hive. But the NPCs can still take you down. Especially at alert level 4, the enemies are no joke. And then for the last part, of course, the build stats. We have a beautiful 59% crit chance, only 1% away from the cap. And we have a 122% critical hit damage with an 80% headshot damage. And then of course let's go over the modifiers real quick. I am not really using an active modifier. If you want to use one active modifier, you can use whatever you like. If I'm utilizing one, I will usually use Numa, but it's all about the passive modifiers in this season, in my humble opinion, especially the sand and stone. This will give us some extra 30% hazard protection and give us some extra armor for that hazard protection within the PvE DZ. And then the best modifier for this season, Inoculated. This will make sure that the toxicity within the PvE DZ builds up 50% slower. Will help you out tons. And for the third one, we used Viper Bite, as this will give us a little bit extra poison damage. So if we run out of bleed bullets, we will always have a little extra status effect that we apply, making sure that our bleed bullets will always be active. But that's pretty much it. A whole breakdown of one of my favorite automatic rifle builds, and now especially in the PvE DZ, giving you shit tons of damage and that survivability. Everyone and their dog is looking for a combination like this. Hit me up in the comments down below if you like this combination. Are you already running around with this? Or is there a different combination that you like to utilize with your rifles? We'll love to hear your opinion. Again, hit me up in the comments down below, but that's pretty much it for me today. Thank you very much for sticking until the end. Like the video if you liked the video or helped you out in any way or form. If you're new here and or you want to be updated by the Division 2, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. And I will see you in the next one. Pure Prime out.